Hello everyone, peace be upon you. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and stay with me until the end of the story. Also, leave a comment telling me which city and country you're watching from. I'd love to see how far my story has reached. For those of you who have already subscribed, I sincerely wish you good health, ease in all your affairs, abundant blessings, and may all your hopes and dreams come true. Amen. Now, let's begin the story. The wind coming off the Virginia pines slapped grit across the tarmac as the CH-47 settled onto Camp Lawson's landing zone. The rotors kicked up a beige storm that made everyone squint and hunch their shoulders. Rowan Blake tugged her cap a little lower and stepped off the ramp like she'd done it 1,000 times. 5'2" in boots, lean and quiet, she looked like a kid wearing gear 2 sizes too big. A duffel rode her back. A hard case nobody asked about stayed welded to her hand. "Great," someone muttered near the motor pool. "They're sending us interns now." Ryan Fletcher didn't whisper. He never did. Laughter rippled through the cluster of soldiers beside him. Master Sergeant Cole Maddox crossed his thick arms and watched with a neutral face that wasn't neutral at all. He'd seen too much to be impressed by first impressions, but he wasn't giving any favors either. Rowan kept moving. No reaction, no wasted motion. Under the bill of her cap her eyes did what they always did, measure, map, record. Guard towers. Blind corners. Fencing gaps. Truck keys dangling where they shouldn't. Water tower sightlines to the main gate. Timings. Angles. If something went sideways, she'd already chosen 3 exits. Inside the admin block, Captain Joel Mercer read names off a clipboard. Daily tasks are posted. Alpha to ranges. Bravo to perimeter. Logistics, Blake, you're with supply. Inventory and counts. Report to Staff Sergeant Keene. Fletcher grinned like he'd won something. "Careful with those boxes," he stage whispered. "Wouldn't want you to pull something on day one." Mercer shot him a look that shut him up for half a second. The warehouse smelled like oil and old canvas. Martin Keene barely looked up from his ledger until she started checking rifles the way a mechanic listens to an engine. She didn't talk much. She didn't have to. Bad lots of 7.62 by crimp, she set aside without drama. Mag springs that felt tired, she swapped. Keene's pen hovered. "You've done this before." Rowan shrugged. "Been around armories." By afternoon the sun turned hard and white. Training moved to the kill house. Plywood walls. Doors that slammed too loud. Paint rounds that left cold splats. Rowan got paired with Fletcher, who smirked his way through the brief like he was auditioning for an audience. "Follow my lead," he said. First room went fine. Second room he called left corner, 2 targets, even though the scratch of boot rubber and a faint breath said right. She trusted her ears. He went left into nothing and paint hammered her plate from the right. The instructor's jaw worked. Fletcher started grandstanding about teamwork. Rowan just reloaded and reset. They ran it again. This time she didn't wait for his call. Breach, slice, 1-2, clean shots on silhouettes that barely peeked. The room went quiet except for the clack of bolts. Maddox watched from the catwalk, one eyebrow ticking up like a question he wasn't ready to ask. Chow was loud that night. Laughter carried, but it bent around Rowan like wind around a post. She ate, finished, and left early. In the narrow barracks room, she laid out her gear with the kind of precision that comes from too many nights in places where sloppy gets you killed. From the hard case she lifted foam and steel. Standard issue on the outside, not so standard where it counted. She worked the bolt until it was silk. Through the window she could see the water tower cut against the sky. Bishop's Bluff, someone had called a ridge on the off-limits map during in-processing. The name stuck in her head like a thumbtack. Reveille hit at 0500. Rowan had finished a circuit before the first boots struck pavement. Formation was tight, breath ghosting in the morning cold. Mercer handed out patrols. Quinn, you're on comms drills. Rios, tracks and signs. Fletcher, Bravo sweep. Blake, warehouse follow-up and then kill house refresher. Fletcher's grin came back. We'll get you a step stool, he said. No one laughed as hard this time. After PT, Maddox found her at the armory window. Up close his presence felt like a wall. You like quiet, he said. Helps me think, she replied. He studied her for a beat longer than comfortable. Thinking's only useful if it leads to the right action. He moved off, leaving the statement hanging, half warning, half invitation. The briefing room's projector hummed that afternoon. Mercer clicked through slides of wooded terrain, the kind that eats sound and men with equal appetite. Unconfirmed activity along the training boundary near a sector we don't use anymore. Some of you heard about tracks no one wants to own. Stay sharp. If you see anything off, report it. A grainy surveillance still flashed, a figure under netting, long rifle, patient posture. No name on the slide. Nobody said one, either. But the room's temperature shifted like someone opened a door to winter. On her way out, Rowan stopped at the corkboard stacked with schedules and off-limits notices. Echo Hollow facility had a red line through it and a stamp from a decade ago. Old munitions depot. Overgrown. Bad footing. She traced the faded perimeter with her eyes, then let it go. Evening brought a sky the color of gunmetal. Helicopter thump rolled across camp as a Chinook moved freight somewhere toward the tree line. Rowan sat on her bunk and turned a small brass compass in her fingers, the edges worn smooth by time. The needle wavered, then steadied. She slid it back into the pocket where it lived. Outside, Fletcher's voice cut through the corridor. Bravado, jokes, a punchline about mascots. Inside, the quiet stretched like a held breath. Tomorrow would be another day of drills, counts, and proving nothing to people who'd already decided. Fine. She wasn't here to change opinions. She was here because someone, somewhere, had started hunting on American soil, and because the map in her head said the hunt had already crossed the fence line. Far out past the lights, the forest listened. Rowan laced her boots, checked the latch on the hard case, and killed the light. The camp slept while the forest listened. At 0500 the horn tore the quiet apart. Formation snapped into place. Captain Mercer's voice carried across the yard, clipped and steady. Unusual tracks were found along the boundary near Bishop's Bluff. Possible overwatch positions. We're verifying a scheduled staff meetup at an off-site cabin. Alpha and Bravo move out in 2 hours. Maddox takes point. Quinn on comms, Rios on signs. Fletcher on Bravo. Blake, spotter detail. A few heads turned. Fletcher smirked like he knew how this would end. Gear checks ate the next 40 minutes. Quinn fought with a stubborn secure net, Rios marked maps, Maddox walked the line with a look that said no one would get a second chance if they blew the first. Mercer pulled Rowan aside at the trucks. You do exactly what Maddox says. If it goes loud, you stay on glass. She nodded once. That was easy. The convoy rolled out under a pale sky. Pavement gave way to dirt, then to 2 ruts through pines. The cabin squatted in a clearing like it had grown there and then lost the will to live. Windows dark. Door a half yaw. Rios lifted 2 fingers, recent sign. Quinn said the net was clean, but Rowan could hear the emptiness in the trees, that heavy kind that means everything is waiting for one sound. Maddox fanned the team. 2 and 2. Slow. Fletcher slid past Rowan with that same loose grin. Don't trip. She ignored him and glassed the roofline. A pile of leaves had been raked into a rest on the north corner. A spider web at the jam was broken and fresh. No birds. This is wrong, she said. Maddox looked at her, then at the eaves. His jaw tightened. Inside. Fast. The smell hit first. Iron and old wood. 3 bodies at the table, each with one neat hole, each place to be seen the second you cleared the door. Words were painted across a cracked wall, "Come find me." "Back out," Maddox ordered. The first shot punched through sun-gray boards where his head had been. Rowan slammed him sideways and fell behind an overturned bench. Splinters rained. "Multiple shooters," she said, already on the scope. "Tree line, east, 300 meters, movement like a shadow where the needles didn't match. Exhale, hold, tap." A figure folded. Quinn's net erupted, static, fragments, then Fletcher yelling contact on the rear. Rios called positions and curses in the same breath. Maddox leaned to shoot and a second round snarled past his cheek. Rowan walked the reticle to a darker notch on the ridge. Another tap. Silence there, then a new flash farther north, longer rifle, better rhythm. She shifted and found him, calm posture, small adjustments, predator stillness. For a half-breath the scope met eyes looking straight back. He fired. She beat him by a blink, felt the recoil, saw his shoulder jolt, rifle tumble. He vanished like smoke rolling off rock. "Move." Maddox dragged them to a deeper angle as the flanks pressed. Quinn finally got the net to bite and Mercer's voice cut through, sending a second element. It would be minutes. They didn't have minutes. Rowan marked the last muzzle flick and timed the gap. 2 left, 1 high, 1 low. Low is nervous. Maddox nodded and counted down on fingers. On 0 they popped, traded, dropped the low. The high went to ground and crawled for a log they'd already ranged. He didn't make it. Then the woods went still. No more fire. No retreat noise. Just breath and the far thump of rotors that might have been anywhere. Rios checked the bodies. Clean gear, no unit pins, expensive glass. "Not locals," he said. Fletcher stared at the wall and swallowed hard. The paint looked dry at first glance. Up close it was still tacky. They held for 5, then 10. Nothing. Whoever ran the show had pulled back, satisfied that the message had landed. Mercer's trucks bounced into the clearing, brakes hot. He took one look at the scene and then at Rowan. "Who hit the ridge?" he asked. No one answered. Maddox pointed at the roofline where the leaf rest sat neat as a calling card. "He was here," Rowan said. "And he'll be somewhere we don't like next." Back at Camp Lawson the debrief room felt too small. Mercer kept the questions tight. Times. Angles. Why she'd called it wrong to go inside and still gone. Because the wrong call was the only open door, she said. He didn't argue. When they were done, the actual open door belonged to Colonel Everett Nash. He stepped in without knocking, silver eagles bright, eyes cooler than the air outside. "Report says you dropped 3, he said to Rowan like he was asking about weather. 2, she corrected. 1 ran. Nash held her stare a moment longer than necessary. "Intel calls the shooter in our backyard, Shadow Fox. 20+ bodies in 8 months. If he's here, we'll find him. Until then, no hero plays. We use the book." Out in the corridor, soldiers watched Rowan pass like she'd changed shape between breakfast and lunch. Fletcher didn't have a joke ready. Maddox fell in beside her. "You saw him," he said. "You looked him in the eye." She nodded once. He looked back. Maddox's mouth pressed thin. Then the game started today. Rowan didn't disagree. She went to her bunk, set the hard case on the bed, and wiped carbon that wasn't there from a bolt that already shone. In the tiny mirror above the sink, a woman who preferred silence studied a face that would not quit. The compass lived in her pocket. The needle held steady. Somewhere beyond the fence, in shadows that knew how to wait, a man with a torn shoulder was already planning the next move. And Rowan could feel it like pressure behind her eyes. Camp Lawson woke mean and gray. Mercer split the day between drills and briefings. Nash added a layer of rules that sounded like safety and smelled like leash. No unsanctioned actions. No solo reconnaissance. "We do this by the book," he said, eyes landing on Rowan like a pin. She gave nothing back. She didn't need a solo run to know the math had changed. Maddox dragged Bravo to the back ranges for a warm-up that felt like punishment. Low crawls through gravel. Bounding overwatch until legs shook. Room entries until everyone's timing bled together. Fletcher started cocky and ended quiet, sweat cutting tracks through dust on his face. In the last run, Rowan took point. Door, slice, angles clean. She didn't wait for calls that came late. Targets dropped. The instructor blew the whistle and just looked at her for a long beat before writing something on his clipboard. At lunch, rumors moved faster than the chow line. 3 dead in the woods. Unknown shooters with gear nobody carries on paper. A word most kept under their breath, Shadow Fox. Quinn parked by the comms van all afternoon like a man married to static. Rios took a map and a coffee and didn't come back for 2 hours. When he did, he spread satellite prints on a folding table and tapped a patch of forest with one fingernail. Echo Hollow, he said. Old Depot. Fences are trash. Lines of fire are way too good. If I were him, I'd stage there. Mercer leaned in. Nash walked up mid-sentence and made it sound like his idea. We'll verify. Controlled recon only. That evening, Mercer called a small room meeting, Maddox, Rowan, Fletcher, Quinn, Rios. He locked the door and dropped his voice. We're getting jerked around. Nash wants optics on everything, which means he doesn't want surprises. I want a team that can move without making noise. That's you 5. Fletcher blinked. Me. Mercer didn't smile. You keep doing what Blake tells you. The plan was simple on paper, quiet approach to Echo Hollow at first light, confirm hides and routes, exfil before anyone noticed they'd been there. Simple plans rarely stayed that way. Rowan didn't sleep much. The compass sat warm in her palm, the needle settled each time she breathed. A picture she never left out lived under her pillow for 10 minutes then went back, 2 figures in desert sun, faces younger and cleaner, one of them hers, the other a man with the same stillness she'd seen through glass on the ridge. She didn't admit it to herself out loud, but she knew the weight of that stare. Elias Vance had once been on her shoulder as a spotter. Now he was a ghost with a fox's patience and a reason to be here. First light found them at the tree line above Echo Hollow. The fence sagged. Concrete bunkers hunched low. Vines ate old signage. Rios went prone, studied sign, and pointed. Fresh. One heavy, favoring left side. Boot isn't army issue. Heel wear says miles, not days. He knows this ground. Quinn put up a handheld mast and fought for a clean net. Maddox split them, 2 and 3. Rowan and Fletcher crawled the south edge under brush that still held last night's dew. The first hide sat where she expected, high corner, broken rebar to rest a barrel, overlook on the approach road. She marked it, then another in the shadow of a collapsed awning. Fletcher almost stepped on a coil of trip line so thin it looked like spider silk. Rowan caught his sleeve and shook her head once. He swallowed, mouthed sorry, and reset his feet. They moved past the old guard tower and found a view that made the back of Rowan's neck tighten. A drainage culvert cut from the inner yard to the timber line, a perfect exit if you needed to vanish after one shot. They pulled back to a dead truck cab to regroup. Maddox took notes like a man building a case. He's staging for an intercept, he said. Quinn finally got a clean burst through the net. Command wants status, he relayed. Mercer came up on the line, low and tight. You've got 1 more hour. In and out. No contact. Nash broke in, voice crisp. Negative on any engagement. If you see him, you hold. That's an order. Rowan stared at the culvert until her eyes hurt. Holding would get people killed if the timing went bad. They retreated through the brush and didn't talk until the trucks, where Mercer pulled them in close. We're not ready to hit him, he said. But we can make him move on our terms. He flicked his eyes at Quinn. Leak a convoy schedule through the same channel that's been bleeding. Not the real one. Something big enough to taste. Quinn hesitated. That'll smoke the mole. Exactly, Mercer said. And it drags him out of the trees. Nash's voice printed in the back of Rowan's mind, no hero plays, but nobody wrote hero on bait. The leak went out right before dusk. Rowan felt the ripple inside the wire, phones that shouldn't ring, doors that closed too careful, officers who suddenly walked with purpose and kept their voices down. In the mess, Fletcher poked at food and didn't speak. Rios drew in a notebook, arrows and circles that built a trap only if all the parts behaved. Maddox stared at the far wall and saw a timeline. Night brought a whisper of rain and a base that couldn't get comfortable. Rowan took her gear apart and put it back together twice. The hard case latched with a click that sounded loud in the small room. A metal knock at her door sent a spark up her spine. She opened to see Mercer, tired and sharp. He closed the door behind him and kept his voice almost nothing. Nash is moving us into a watch posture. We play along. You'll run glass at south approach with Rios. Maddox and Quinn take north. Fletcher goes liaison at HQ. Rowan frowned. Why Fletcher? Because if someone leaks again, I want eyes in the room when it happens. After he left, Rowan turned the compass over and over. She didn't want Fletcher anywhere near the center of gravity, but using him like a mirror might be the only way to see the hand behind their backs. She set the compass down and stared at the ceiling until the dark felt like cloth. Pre-dawn tasted like tin. They moved in 2 soft vehicles to a cut road a kilometer out and hiked the rest. The forest held the kind of quiet that feels like a secret. In the South Hide, Rowan built her world, rifle on bags, glass aligned to the eastern lip of Echo Hollow, sectors divided with pencil marks no one else could see. Rios ranged the culvert, the tower, the angled slab by the main gate. If he's here, he's early, he murmured. He'll get inside our rhythm, not ride it. She didn't answer. The net crackled once, then Quinn's whisper, convoy decoy rolling. 35 minutes. Fletcher's voice followed from HQ, thinner with distance. Command is green. Nash in the room. General staff observers present. Time stretched. A squirrel broke a branch and Rowan's heart rate didn't change. When movement finally came, it wasn't where she wanted. West Ridge, a shade heavier than wind, sliding along in a pattern she knew too well. Got one, she breathed. 800. West line. He's not sloppy. Rios adjusted. That gate's wrong for the shoulder wound. Agreed, she said. Spotter or security? Seconds later, a flicker at the culvert mouth, too clean to be accident. She could feel Vance without seeing him, a shape in the blind spot he'd designed himself. Quinn's net popped again, urgent. Change of route pushed from HQ. New timing, new approach, came from Nash's console. Rowan's jaw clenched. That would force the decoy into the longest sightline. Rios whispered what they both knew. He's being fed. Rowan's finger found the trigger wall and didn't take up slack. Orders were orders until they got people dead. She slid the reticle to the culvert and let her breath fall into the space between heartbeats. The forest waited with her, and somewhere in that stillness a man she used to trust adjusted his plan to meet theirs. Rowan eased a breath and let the reticle rest on the culvert lip. Rios tracked the west ridge, counting seconds between that shadow's pauses. Quinn whispered convoy ETA. Fletcher came over the net from HQ, voice tight. New route confirmed. Colonel Nash signed off. Rowan didn't answer. The change opened a long corridor right across Echo Hollow. Clean for a shooter who wanted a headline. A glint touched the culvert mouth and vanished. Not sun. Glass. Rowan shifted 2 clicks and held. Culvert. He's here, she breathed. Rios barely nodded. Wind 1/4 left. 2 mils high for the slab. She didn't fire. Orders were hold. Orders also got people killed when the deck was stacked. The decoy convoy turned onto the approach road early. Quinn's voice had that edge people get when they know the clock is wrong. 30 seconds ahead of plan due to reroute. Movement, left of the culvert, fast, low, deliberate. Not a shot. A toss. A small flash grenade hit the slab, popped a soft white that washed the sightlines for anyone looking the wrong way. A screen. The kind Elias used to throw to make rookies blink. Rowan kept her eye open through the flare. The silhouette that flowed after it moved like muscle memory she still owned. Shoulder taped under the ghillie. Scar at the jaw. He slid behind a cracked jersey barrier and raised his rifle, past the convoy lane, not at it, toward the tower where the nervous security man had been pacing since dawn. Tower, Rowan said. He's not shooting the convoy. She took the shot first. The tower's dark figure dropped mid-raise, a suppressed muzzle falling out of sight. Rios swore. Inside job on the tower. Then the real trap snapped. Fire hit from the trees opposite their hides, tight, professional, no radio chatter, no unit marks. Not Vance's men. Clean up. Break contact south. Now. Rowan rolled off the bags as dirt chewed where her head had been. Rios laid 2 short bursts and moved. Quinn called in that north team was pinned, Maddox returning fire, unknown hostiles closing. Fletcher broke in from HQ, breathless. Nash just cleared a rapid response unit off book. They're not in the system. He told the room the convoy was compromised by internal actors. He's sending them to your grid. The line crackled, someone yelled in the background, Fletcher came back lower. Mercer tried to object. Nash shut him down hard. Rowan and Rios slid into the culvert ditch, bellies in cold water, then bellied back out under brush on the far side. Rounds clipped fern tips above them. A figure in matte black cut across their flank. Rowan tagged the hip and the man folded without a sound. She touched her push-to-talk twice, Maddox's code 4, south route, grid delta. 2 clicks returned. Still alive up there. They pushed toward the bunker row, hugging shadow lines between sun patches. Footfalls ahead, 2 sets, different cadence. Rowan braced at a caved doorway and waited. The first shape sliced the corner clean. She trapped the barrel, drove an elbow, dumped him. The second came harder. Rios took him at the knee and finished it with a controlled press. No insignia. Matching optics. Foreign stock trigger group. Not regular army. A voice came from the dark of the bunker behind them. You're late, Echo. The old field name scraped down her spine. Elias Vance stepped out of shadow, rifle low, eyes alive and reading everything. Up close he looked like the photo she kept hidden and the ghost she tried not to believe in. You brought company, Rio said, weapon still on him. Elias lifted an empty palm. Your tower had the real shooter. He wasn't aiming at the convoy. He was aiming at your guys. Someone at HQ changed the route to force a line of sight. Rowan didn't lower her rifle. Nash, she said. Elias didn't disagree. Another burst from the north. Maddox on the net, clipped and calm. 2 down. Pushing to fallback. We've got black suits with no call signs. Elias jerked his chin. Those are not here for me. They're here to clean you up after a story gets written. He tossed a small brass disc across the floor. Rowan caught it. A fox head, tarnished, with a name etched on the back, Rowan. You left me breadcrumbs, she said. You didn't follow them, he said, but there wasn't heat in it, there was relief. Quinn finally punched through the jamming. We're cut off. North team relocating. HQ comms have traffic I can't log. Something's wrong up here. Fletcher's voice overlapped, shaky. Nash locked the room. He's calling us compromised. He wants Mercer relieved. I'm sending what I can to General Whitford's office, but if he notices, I'm cooked. Elias was already moving. We don't win this from here. We break contact east. There's a drainage tunnel to the timber. Maddox meets us at the old guard post. Rowan didn't move. Why should I trust you? He held her look. Because I just kept you from shooting the wrong man and because the guys in black don't miss twice. Rounds skipped across the bunker mouth and made the decision. They dropped into a cracked utility trench, punched through stink and dust, and came up under a chain-link panel half buried in kudzu. The forest pressed close and wet. Rowan keyed twice. Maddox answered with one long click and two shorts, moving, contested. They angled northeast, using the rise to mask their line. Elias ghosted 20 feet ahead, pausing where he knew she would pause. It was infuriating how easy their spacing clicked back in. At the old guard post, Maddox and Quinn were down to half their mags, faces hard and steady. 3 black suits lay in front like punctuation. Maddox clocked Elias in one glare that could have cut metal. We're shooting with the guy we were hunting. For the next 10 minutes, Rowan said. After that we argue. Maddox snorted once. 10 minutes is generous. The black suits regrouped in the trees, careful now. They'd tested the perimeter and found teeth. Elias pointed with 2 fingers. They'll try to fix us with a pair here and fold a third from the west to roll us. Your best exit is dirty, cut straight through their shallow and hit the timber draw. They won't expect you to run at them. Maddox didn't like it, which meant it would work. Quinn, smoke right. Rios, left cut. Blake with me. On my count. They moved on 3. Smoke bloomed and wind carried it low. Rowan and Maddox punched the seam where 2 black suits crossed coverage. Close, mean work. Then trees. Then quiet that felt like a held breath again. They ran 100 yards, dropped to a knee, ran again. The net crackled and Fletcher came through in gasps. General Whitford got my packet. He's calling an immediate hold on Nash's authority. MP's moving. If I cut off, that means, the line went dead. Rowan felt her stomach drop. Elias glanced back once. Your kid's brave, he said. He better be lucky, too, Maddox said. They broke into a narrow cut where rock rose on both sides and wind died. Elias stopped them with an open hand. He tilted his head. Rowan heard it half a second later, a different team moving fast and sloppy, too many feet. Too much radio chatter. Not black suits. MPs. A voice boomed from a bullhorn. Drop weapons. Hands where we can see. By order of Colonel Nash, you are detained. Maddox's jaw flexed. He's trying to bag us before Whitford can stop him. Rowan stepped into view slow, rifle high but muzzle a hair down. You're late to the wrong party, she called. General Whitford just issued a hold on Nash's command. Check your net. The lieutenant hesitated, radio to ear, listening. Confusion hit his face. He looked past Rowan and finally saw the black suits fanning behind the trees, sliding for angle. Down. Rowan yelled and dragged him behind a stump as the black suits opened up on everyone. Chaos tore the cut. MPs hit dirt and returned fire without knowing who they were saving. Elias and Rowan sewed the flank closed with measured shots. Maddox hauled a wounded MP backward by his collar and shoved a tourniquet high on a thigh. Quinn jammed a fresh battery into his handset and screamed into the net for any unit on Whitford's channel. For 30 seconds it was just noise and muzzle flash. Then a new voice cut in, low and iron. "This is General Whitford. All Lawson elements, cease executing Colonel Nash's directives. Detain Nash if he resists. Secure the operations center. Field teams, hold and identify." The black suits felt the tide turn and started to peel. Rowan tracked the last one through a sliver of trees and let him go. Dead men don't testify. Silence fell in jags. MPs stared at Rowan, at Elias, at the bodies. The lieutenant's hands shook as he keyed up. "General, this is Lieutenant Carr. We have inter-unit engagement at Echo Hollow. Unknown operators down. Suspected off-book team. Colonel Nash's orders conflict with your broadcast." Whitford came back in a breath. "Hold position. MPs at HQ are moving now." Rowan slid down the stump and finally let her lungs catch up. Elias watched the tree line like the fight had a second act. Maddox wiped blood off his knuckles and looked at Rowan hard. "We're past the book," he said. She nodded. "Then we write a new one." Quinn raised a hand, headset tilted. "HQ update, Nash tried to walk out. MPs intercepted. Mercer with them. Whitford en route to Lawson." Rowan stood, shoulders square. "We go back and finish this in the open. Bring Rios's photos. Bring the trip line spool. Bring the tower cam if it survived." Elias met her eyes, something like a question and an answer both. "You sure you want me in that room?" "I want the truth in that room," she said. "After that, we deal with you." They moved down the cut as the light shifted, a tired column of people who had almost been erased by a story designed in an office. At the edge of the trees Rowan paused and looked back at Echo Hollow, concrete bones and old wire catching the sun. The trap had sprung and missed. The forest held its breath again, but now it waited on their terms. In the distance, sirens rose off base roads, and above the pines a pair of birds banked toward Lawson like judgment. Rowan tightened the strap on her case and started walking. The next shots would be fired in a room with flags on the wall. Mercer led them through the admin corridor that suddenly felt too narrow for how much truth they were carrying. MPs lined the hall, faces set, radios hissing with orders from General Whitford's channel. Nash sat at the end of the conference table, wrists bound, uniform perfect, eyes like ice. He didn't look at Rowan. He studied the ceiling, the clock, anything that wasn't the people he'd tried to feed into a grinder. Whitford entered without ceremony, gray hair damp from the rain, jaw locked. "This meeting is recorded," he said. "Begin." Mercer placed a clear evidence box on the table, Rios's photos of the leaf-built shooting rest, the spool of trip line, the scrap from the tower post with fresh tool marks, shell casings with odd crimps, a thumb drive pulled from the tower cam that Quinn had yanked before the black suits overran them. Rios spoke first, straight and clean, positions, ranges, timelines. Quinn followed, describing the reroute orders that came from Nash's console, then the off-book team that appeared on net without a unit tag. Fletcher stood near the wall, sleeve taped where an MP medic had patched a scrape. He looked young and stubborn and scared, but his voice didn't shake when he said he transmitted directly to Whitford because the comms in Nash's room felt wrong. Rowan waited until Whitford called her name. She kept it to facts. Contact at the cabin. Angles at Echo Hollow. The false flash thrown to wash lenses. The tower muzzle that wasn't theirs. The cleanup team trying to erase both sides. She didn't reach for drama. She didn't need to. The pictures and times held their own weight. Nash finally spoke, voice smooth as glass. "You're being conned by a ghost story. These children walked into a training scenario they didn't understand, then manufactured a conspiracy to cover their mistakes. The so-called off-book team were contractors assisting with a counterintelligence drill authorized at my level. Whitford didn't look at him. "Show me the authorization." Nash smiled like a man who always had a paper somewhere. "Classified." "Not anymore," Whitford said. He nodded to an MP captain, who slid a folder across. "We pulled your tasking. It doesn't exist." The smile died hard. Mercer plugged the tower cam drive into a secure terminal. The screen threw grain. Then it sharpened. A man in a Lawson uniform, face turned just enough to avoid a full profile, brought a suppressed rifle to shoulder and aimed across the corridor Rowan's decoy convoy would travel after the reroute. A timestamp sat ugly in the corner, matching the moment Quinn called the change. Nash shifted in his chair for the first time. "Identify him," Whitford said. An intel tech leaned close to the screen, scraped a frame, enhanced nothing and still got enough. Mercer exhaled a name like a curse. Staff Sergeant Hale. Range Staff. On Nash's temporary detail. The MP captain made a call, boots thudded down the hall, somewhere distant a door hit a wall. Nash cleared his throat. "You're reaching." Whitford finally looked at him. "You reached first." Elias stood in the corner under two rifles and a signed waiver Mercer had shoved at him on the way in. He didn't speak until Whitford asked, "And you?" Elias kept it short. A brief history without the classified scars. A pattern of deaths around a defunct program that had different names in different memos but always the same beneficiaries. Money funneled. Missions altered. People neutralized and blamed. "You will answer for your kills," Whitford said. "Maybe," Elias replied. "But the men you need aren't dead yet." An aide slipped Whitford a note. He read it, nodded once, and faced the room. "Hale is in custody and already trying to trade his way out. He says the reroute came from Nash." Nash leaned forward, anger finally breaking the mask. "Hearsay. From a panicked E6. Backed by console logs Quinn preserved off your network," Whitford said. "Quinn passed a second drive. Mirrored as soon as I saw the push. You can verify against the router. The tech didn't need long." "Confirmed. Originating terminal matches Nash's device ID." Silence settled like dust after a blast. Whitford drew a line under it. "Colonel Everett Nash, you are relieved of duty and placed under arrest for conspiracy, unlawful orders, and attempted murder, pending additional charges." Nash stood, nostrils flaring, then tried one last path out. "You have no idea who you're actually touching." "I don't care," Whitford said. "We'll touch them in order." They moved Nash out. The door clicked. The room felt larger. Whitford rubbed a hand over his face and looked 10 years older for 3 seconds. Then he straightened. "Here's how this proceeds. Internal Affairs and JAG will take the local cases. A joint team from outside Lawson will handle the rest. Effective immediately, Mercer's element is insulated. Your actions today will be recognized as line of duty under extraordinary circumstance." He turned to Rowan. "That includes you." She nodded once. No relief, just the next step. Fletcher shifted, like he wanted to ask if he was in trouble for breaking chain to reach Whitford. The general spared him the question. "Private Fletcher, you disobeyed a superior officer's implied intent to preserve evidence and protect lives." "Good." The kid let out air he'd been holding so long it made him sway. Rowan felt the energy in the teen loosen a notch. The danger wasn't gone, but the blade wasn't at their throat anymore. Maddox rolled one shoulder like a man who'd carried a pack too long. Rios finally sat. Quinn took off his headset and rubbed his eyes. Whitford returned to Elias. "You don't belong in my building." "No," Elias said. "But your problem didn't start in it." Whitford looked at Rowan. Do you vouch? She measured the question, the risk, the hours between now and whatever came next. For what he knows, she said. Not for what he's done. Whitford accepted the line. Then here's the deal, you stay off every net I own. You hand over what you have on the program that fed this. You leave this installation when I say. After that, we negotiate with people who have more stars than me. Elias's smile didn't reach his eyes. I'm tired of doing this alone. The formal recordings ended. Whitford dismissed the room but held Rowan, Mercer, Maddox, and Quinn. There's going to be fallout. Press inquiries. Quiet pressure. People showing up with credentials that look real. You don't talk to anyone who doesn't sit in this office or jag with a recorder running. He looked at Rowan. You didn't just win a gunfight. You kept a narrative from erasing my soldiers. That matters more than you think. In the hallway, soldiers who'd stared earlier now moved out of the way like they'd remembered their manners. Fletcher caught up with Rowan. I thought I was cooked, he said. You're learning, she answered. Keep learning faster. He nodded, almost smiled. They stepped outside into wet light. Sirens faded. Helicopters thudded dull and far. Mercer stopped them at the steps. Get chow. Get sleep. We cycle again at 0600. Paperwork and statements first. Then we finish the fences we didn't finish today. Maddox grunted agreement. And we find out who else thought Blackbird was a good idea. Rowan felt the old name land between them, heavy and hot, a word that opened doors you couldn't close. Mercer heard it too. We don't say that out loud unless we have to, he said. But yes. We're not done. That night, Lawson sounded like a bass again, boots, laughter, metal on concrete. In her room, Rowan placed the compass on the table and laid the hard case beside it. She looked at the photo for a long time, then put it away. She thought about a girl under floorboards a lifetime ago, about a promise that hadn't expired just because a colonel in cuffs said the right words. The system had worked today because one general chose to make it work. Tomorrow they'd see how far that choice could carry. Her phone buzzed with a secure ping. A short message from Whitford's aide, preliminary commendations filed, protective detail assigned, outside tasking authority forming. Beneath it, a line that wasn't standard, we'll need a small, quiet unit to keep digging. Recommendations. Rowan typed 3 names and paused on the 4th. Then she wrote it anyway, Vance, consultant, limited access. She hit send, turned off the light, and let the dark be just dark for once. Out past the fence, Echo Hollow sat empty and ugly, but it wasn't in charge anymore. The pressure behind her eyes eased. Morning would come, and with it the work that starts after the shooting stops. Rowan woke before reveille and read Whitford's brief in the dim light. Preliminary commendations moved forward, a joint task force stood up, Lawson shielded from quiet interference. At the bottom he'd added a line that didn't read like a general. Need a small, quiet unit to keep digging. Use who you trust. She answered with the names she'd already typed, Maddox, Rios, Quinn, Fletcher, and the 4th that would complicate everything, Vance, consultant, limited access. She hit send and laced her boots. By noon, Internal Affairs and JAG were grinding through statements. Hale folded in under an hour, then told them about burner accounts, contractor cutouts, and assignments with too much access for a staff sergeant who'd never been that important until Nash needed someone who'd disappear. The thread pointed to an outside handler who signed himself with a bird name on wire messages and bought coffee on post with a visitor badge no one bothered to verify. Quinn mapped the logins, Rios put pins on a wall map and traced the geometry that made sense only when you'd lived at the business end of it. The next handoff, if the pattern held, would be off-post, quiet, metal on metal, rail yard, industrial edge of town, just loud enough that shots wouldn't echo as scandal. Whitford didn't bless a gunfight. He authorized a capture with MPs in the second ring and the daybreak element inside the first. Mercer ran the brief, all steel, no theater. We're done being somebody else's alibi. Clean. Fast. No freelancing. Maddox touched the table with one thick finger. We pull the handler alive. Rowan nodded. And his phone. Dusk dropped like a curtain over the Lawson perimeter. The rail yard breathed diesel and old iron. Freight sat in rusting rows. A switch house threw a weak rectangle of light onto gravel. Rowan and Elias took the east catwalk where they could see the lane without silhouetting themselves. Rios crawled the south ditch and built tripwires out of light and angle. Quinn ran an air-gapped recorder for any device that blinked. Fletcher sat in the van with an MP sergeant in his nervous sweat, one eye on the gate camera and one on the clock he couldn't slow. The handler came on a timetable you could set your pulse to, khakis, a ball cap, the kind of face nobody notices, a messenger bag hugged too close. He paused beneath the catwalk and checked his phone, reflecting a white square against his jaw. Elias tapped Rowan's sleeve and pointed across the grid. Another man slid out of shadow, contractor gait, contractor beard, contractor boredom. He carried a second bag, smaller, heavier. Payment meets orders, Elias breathed. Rowan keyed her mic once. Stand by. They let the choreography complete itself, a look, the touch of bag to bag, a nod that said we're done. Then Maddox's voice, calm and full. Now. The switch flipped. MPs rolled from behind stacked ties and painted both men in white light. Contractor went for his belt. Rowan's round punched his thigh and put him on the gravel, yelling and alive. The handler froze, eyes wide, hands up. He started a speech about credentials that wouldn't pass daylight. Maddox took the bag and showed him the inside like a mirror, cash bands, forged clearances, a laminated schedule that matched Nash's console pushes frame for frame. Counselors will love this, Maddox said. Quinn grabbed the phone midlock and shoved it into the Faraday wrap. Got it. Rios tagged a third figure trying to slither under a flat car and dragged him out by the boots. Spotter, he said. The kind who calls police when the trap snaps. MPs cuffed all three. The yard went loud for 2 minutes, then quiet again, like nothing had happened. You could stand there and believe you'd imagined it, except for the torn denim and the smell of cordite and the way the air felt thin after tension leaves it. Back on base, evidence moved faster than rumor. The phone gave them names with bad OPSEC habits and group chats that thought emojis erased intent. The handler cracked under the math of federal time and offered a list tied to a program with a retired designation and present tense money. It was the same shape Rowan and Elias had chased on separate roads for too long, the same cold architecture that had bent missions and killed friends and written the after-action reports first. Whitford didn't make speeches. He signed tasking orders and moved weight where it would hurt. Contractors lost contracts. A colonel's patron called a lawyer and then called no one. The story tried to leak and ran into a wall of ongoing investigation, and a general who didn't mind being quoted saying soldiers don't get to be pawns if he could help it. Rowan met Elias in the empty kill house after midnight, because old battlefields are where you say things that leave marks. He leaned against a plywood door jamb and studied the scuffed floor. You signed my name on that list, he said. Limited access, she answered. Leash and muzzle. He almost smiled. You never liked talking. Then listen, she said. You keep your word. You give Whitford everything. When this part is over, you stand where you're told and answer for the bodies you put in the ground. I'll stand there, too, and I'll tell it straight. He nodded, and the nod held years. Deal. Morning made the base look cleaner than it was. Paperwork stacked. Commendations that felt heavy for something Rowan didn't celebrate landed in inboxes. Mercer called the core team to the range, not for a drill but to breathe. Maddox cracked a joke that wasn't funny and still relieved the coil in everyone's shoulders. Rios held up a coffee like a toast and said nothing. Quinn slept sitting up for the first time in days. Fletcher practiced an apology he didn't need. Rowan cut it off with 2 words. Good work. Whitford met them at the fence line, hands in pockets, eyes on the pine tops. It won't be over quickly, he said. It will be over properly. He looked at Rowan. Daybreak is yours if you want it. Small, quiet, accountable. You pick the fights, I sign the paper. She thought about how silence had kept her alive and how speaking had kept them all from being erased. I want it, she said. He nodded once, like a man who'd expected that answer and was relieved anyway. At Bishop's Bluff, the wind moved through needles and carried no threat. Echo Hollow lay beyond like a bad idea in concrete, tagged, taped, and finally honest. Rowan packed the compass into her pocket and walked the perimeter with Maddox until boots hit the dirt where the fence had sagged. What's it feel like? He asked. Not finished, she said. Better. He grunted. Good enough to eat? Almost, she said, and, for the first time since the rotors at Lawson threw grit in her face, she smiled. That night, she sat on her bunk with the hard case open and the photo in her hand. 2 kids in sun they didn't understand, both convinced they were the sharp end of something clean. She slid the photo back. The sharp end wasn't clean. It didn't need to be, as long as you knew what you were cutting for. Outside, the bass hummed. Inside, she let the room be quiet. The needle in the compass steadied. She thought about the lesson she'd carry into whatever came next, that keeping your voice doesn't mean speaking loud, sometimes it means holding your aim until the right second and then saying exactly enough. Daybreak would form at 0600. She would choose the fights that kept kids like Fletcher from learning the hard parts the hard way. And when the wind off the pines slid under the window and the dark pressed soft instead of heavy, she finally closed her eyes, not because danger had gone, but because it no longer owned the narrative.